Lovely to meet you, Lisa Norman. Thank you for spending time this afternoon on Perfect Health on Elastic FM with Elaine Godley.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me, Elaine.
You have a story about your pregnancy and what happened subsequently with your son. So, first of all, how old were you when you were pregnant?
So I was 29 when I was pregnant, and it was our first baby. So we just got married the year before, and we decided that we were going to buy a nice big house, which we managed to do. We'd been saving up for a while, and we were going to start a family and get a dog. So we ended up with a puppy as well, whilst I was just before I found out I was pregnant. And then early on in my pregnancy, I was diagnosed with something called PAP-A, which is a protein deficiency in the placenta.
Did you say PAP? P-A-P?
P-A-A-P.
P-A-A-P, PAP-A.
Yeah.
Okay, I've not heard of that. So that was a protein deficiency.
Yeah, so there was nothing to be alarmed about. The pregnancy could go on as normal with no interventions until I got to 30 weeks. And then at 30 weeks, they wanted to just do some scans and make sure that baby was growing as he should do. So, and they were routine and normal procedure for where we are. So I turned up for my first scan, and as sometimes is the way with hospital parking, we couldn't find anywhere to park. So my husband was like, I'll drop you off at the door and I'll drive round and try and find a parking space, and I'll come in if I find one. So I went in initially to the scan by myself. They were on time, which is really good, because when you're a pregnant lady going for your scan, they tell you to drink lots of water. So I was absolutely desperate for a wee. Couldn't wait for this scan to be done so that I could go to the loo. And yeah, so the sonographer was on time, thankfully. And I went in on my own and just mentioned to her that my husband was trying to find parking. He'd pop in, and I was just going to text him the room number if that was okay. Yeah, that was fine. So we went in, she started doing the scan, and she said, see if your husband has sent you a text and see if he's on his way in. So I checked, he wasn't. So she said, I'm just going to tell security that I've told him to park in the 10-minute bay. Just give him a ring and tell him that that's what I've told him to do. So then she went out the room, I rang him up, and he's part of the emergency services, so he wasn't too happy about parking in this bay, because that's what it's for the ambulances and for the dads dropping off labouring mums, so they can do a quick drop off.
Yes.
And he's like, I've seen the baby, just get the picture, you know, you can jump in and we'll go. I was like, well, she's left the room and she's told security now. So he was like, all right, okay, fine. So he came in, and literally as soon as his bum hit the seat, she was like, something's wrong with the baby. The heart rate's too quick. And she showed us the scan that she'd taken, and she's like, all his tummy here, it shouldn't be that big. So she said, whilst I was telling your husband and telling security that I told him to park in the 10-minute bay, I've sent up your scan to the doctors and the consultants, and I'm just going to pop you in another room. They've been having a chat, and I'll come back and let you know what the course of action is going to be. So she then left us, and she came back, but within a couple of minutes they'd made a really quick decision, and the decision was I was going up to theatre and I was having my baby right now.
Gosh, 30 weeks.
At 30 weeks, yeah.
So remind me, it's a long time ago since I had any little ones. How many weeks are we supposed to go?
About 40, and no longer than 42.
Right, crikey. So it's very early then.
Yeah. So we were rushed upstairs. I was asked so many questions. What had I eaten? What had I drunk? Am I allergic to anything? Baby's movements. I was asked by the nurses. I was asked by the consultants. I was asked by the registrar who was going to be performing the C-section. I was asked by the anaesthetist as well. So I had the same lot questions, all repeated several times. And then exactly 2 hours and 2 minutes from my appointment time, my son was born.
Goodness me. So did you have an emergency cesarean?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
How did you feel about that? Because I don't suppose you had any idea of that when you went to the routine appointment.
No clue whatsoever. So basically, I knew what they teach you in school or what you start researching as a pregnant mum as to what possibly can happen. So I knew what a cesarean was, sort of, but you don't know in any great detail. And you know, like what you see on TV and things like that. So I wasn't prepared, not at all. And when he was born as well, they were such a well-oiled machine that they didn't need to communicate to each other. So I was one side of this curtain that was going across my middle, and I had no idea what was going on. And just before my husband had come in, because they sent him to get his gown and his scrubs on and everything.
So you were awake while you were having the cesarean. It was what do they call it? Epidural cesarean?
It was an epidural, yeah. So I was awake, and yeah, but they told my husband when he was away from me, we don't think your son's going to survive this delivery.
Oh, dear me.
So I didn't know at this point until a little bit later on. It was a case of just get me through the operation and we'll deal with anything else once you're stitched up and you know,
Yeah,
we'll
goodness
take
me.
it from there. Yeah, so anyway, I was going to him, you've got to peek around the curtain, you've got to tell me what's happening. I need to know. And he's like, they're surrounding him, but I can't see anything. I don't know what's happening.
Did you know you were having a boy?
Yeah, I wanted to know at 20 weeks. I was impatient. My husband wanted a surprise, but no, I wanted to know. So yeah, we knew we were having a boy, although we still hadn't decided on a name. We thought we had loads of time for that, so we'd only just started discussing names really. But yeah, so then they turned around and said, right, your son's in an incubator, and you can see him for about a minute, but then we've got to take him to the neonatal unit. So I got to see my little boy for about a whole minute, and the fluid that was on his tummy was also on his limbs, so he looked like a plump, healthy baby, and he was actually looking, so his eyes were open and he was looking at me and everything, so he looked like a healthy baby. It looked like nothing could be wrong with him at all. But then later on we found out how seriously ill he was, so they took him up to the neonatal unit, and my husband was allowed to go up and see him at about 8 o'clock in the evening. So he was born at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was allowed to go and see him at about 10 o'clock at night. So it
What
was quite
condition did they say? What condition did they say he had, or were they still doing investigations?
No, they knew by this point. So he had the fluid on his tummy was called hydrops, and if that fluid reached his heart and lungs, he was going to drown.
Oh, goodness.
So they needed to get that under control. And he had a heart condition which is shortened to SVT, but it stands for supraventricular tachycardia. So basically his heart was beating too quickly. So his heart was beating at 320 beats a minute when he was born.
Goodness. And did the hydrops cause the SVT or vice versa, or are they linked?
They were linked, yeah. So the heart was in SVT, and the body's reaction to that was there must be something wrong and it needs protecting. So it sent fluid to the body to protect itself.
I see.
But that was then too much fluid, and if it didn't shift, then yeah, he was basically going to drown in this fluid.
What did they explain to you was the reason for the SVT?
No, and they still don't know. So it's just an electrical impulse, and his heart decided that it was just going to fire off this electrical impulse at random bursts and just make it beat too quickly. and they really, really struggled to get that under control. So for the first 4 weeks, we were pretty much told, we don't know if your son is going to survive. He's likely to suffer heart failure because everything they tried just did not work. So it got to the point where his heart was in SVT for 24 hours straight. And they basically said that he needs more specialist help. So he was booked in to go to Alderhay Hospital. His bed, unfortunately, was taken whilst he was en route to the hospital. So they had to divert him to Liverpool Women's, and the Alderhay doctors and consultants went over to Liverpool Women's Hospital, where they saw him there. So, and they were so quick as well. Within 12 hours, they had his heart condition under control, which was absolutely.
Where were you during this transport?
We were at home. We weren't allowed to go with him. So they transferred him. It was like, I think it was about, gosh, they told us at 6 o'clock in the evening that they were going to be making the transfer. It took them 3 hours to get the paperwork together. And then it took them just over an hour to get him all transported, and because he was rigged up to so much medication, oxygen, we needed paramedics, he needed a specialist doctor on board and a nurse. So yeah, he needed a team basically to go with him.
Gosh, that must have been really scary. So you and your husband were at home, not knowing the exact ins and outs, but you just knew that your son was going to be hopefully stabilised. And did they keep you informed as things were going, or were you just literally in limbo?
They told us once they'd left the hospital, and they told us once they arrived, and they said that the transport went well. So they then said to us, go to bed, ring up in the morning. So then it became normal again, because that's what we'd done for the last 4 weeks. So it was go to bed, try and get a bit of sleep. But they gave us all the numbers for the new neonatal unit that he was on, so that we could ring them at any point and ask any questions if we were worried through the night.
Were you and your husband working at this time?
My husband was given time off due to the nature of the birth. So they didn't think, he's a police officer, so they didn't think he would be able to focus properly at work, and considering the stress levels and things that a police officer goes through, it was a wise decision on their part. So yeah, he was off with me at the time, and I'd been signed off sick a few weeks before the emergency C-section. So because my son was sat so low, he was pushing on my hips and my spine. So I was finding it really uncomfortable. So I just started going to aquanasal classes and things like that to try and strengthen my hips and my back. So I was due to go back to work. But then obviously we had the emergency C-section, so there was no chance of that happening. So that was the start of my maternity leave.
Right. So are you still on maternity leave?
No, I was due to go back in the May of 2017. And I could not, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was, because once we were finished on the neonatal unit, we were only home for 4 days, and my son went into respiratory arrest, and my husband had to resuscitate him at home. So then we were rushed back to hospital, and this was my son's first round with bronchiolitis. So, and we spent pretty much the year going in and out of hospital all the time with his bronchiolitis and his health conditions. So it came to May, I was due to go back to work, and I went to the doctors and I just said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I was having nightmares, I was having flashbacks, I was having panic attacks. So they said, yeah, with trauma, that's kind of what we expect. And I was very quickly diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome and anxiety. So they offered me medication, and I thought, that's just not a route I want to go down. I need to feel quite vigilant with my son to monitor his health conditions and things. So they offered me cognitive behavioural therapy, and it was the best thing I did. So I decided to go on to statutory maternity pay, which was a huge pay cut. We did not know how we were going to cover the bills, but we did somehow. I suppose you just get on with it, don't you?
Because it's amazing how resilient we can all be when we have to be. You just, like you say, you just get on with it.
You
And
do.
I find it's when I hear so many stories of adversity, but how people get through it, and you don't know what reserves you've got until you're actually forced into a situation where you have no choice. So you managed to get through that financial period, and you're still off work, are you?
No, I went back full time, but I went back in September. So I went back on a phased return. So they introduced me to work very gradually, and I went back up to my full time hours, and they've been really good. So they know that my son's health triggers my mental health.
Yes, yeah. What do you do, Lisa?
I'm a civil servant, so I work for HM Revenue and Customs.
So you're able to do flexi time, I would imagine.
Yep, so I have flexi time, which is really good, and they have been amazing at letting me work from home in the afternoons. So I go into the office in the mornings, and then in the afternoons I work from home.
And how is your son now? Well, what's his name? We keep calling him your son. What's his
Yeah,
name?
so his name's Neil.
Neil. Okay. So how is Neil now, and how old is he?
He's 21 months and he's doing really, really well. So he still gets poorly, and his lungs are the main issue. So because he was intubated for so long and on oxygen for so long, the tubes scarred his lungs. So he has chronic lung disease. So that does mean that bronchiolitis can be a recurring health issue for him. So we have been in and out of hospital with that. His heart condition has been really good though, and his last episode was on the 23rd of October last year. So he's gone a really long time with his heart condition being really stable, which is absolutely brilliant, amazing news. So yes, so yeah, whilst he's not 100%, he's certainly getting there, and he doesn't let anything stop him. He's just so active and so full of life. So yeah,
Brilliant, brilliant. So it's a happy ending.
it certainly is. Yeah, yes, yes, definitely.
You mentioned CBT. So how did you find CBT?
Um, CBT was really hard work. It was they make you dig so deep and they make you relive the memories. And that worried me when I initially spoke to the therapist about doing that. Is why would you want to relive those events? So yeah, they scared me, and I was meant to go for 6 sessions, and I actually ended up having 22 because my trauma was ongoing. So it didn't just stop when I'd gone through a traumatic birth and then had to resuscitate my son at home, because he had those health conditions and he was still needing to go into hospital. It re-triggered all those nightmares and panic attacks and flashbacks and things. So yeah, it was hard work, but I am so glad I did it. It was well worth doing. And the therapist was just absolutely amazing. She was so good.
This is
Um,
one-to-one cognitive behavioural profile, cognitive behavioural therapy.
it was, yeah. So I went through the events with her, and she taught me lots of techniques to ground myself if I was feeling panicky or having a flashback. She taught me techniques of, because anxiety, you worry about things that haven't happened yet. Because it's happened before, you think it might happen again. So it's constantly updating your brain and reminding it that he's okay, and as he grows up he's got different signs, he's got different tells as to when he's poorly, he can communicate in different ways. So yeah, it was tough, but it was so worth doing.
So is he going through the normal stages you would expect of a 21-month-old to go through, as far as you know?
um So when they're born premature, they work off a corrected age until they're about 2.5. So because he was 10 weeks early, so it's about 2.5 months, they usually round it down to about 3 months. So when like your health visitor comes out, they will assess him for being 18 months old rather than
Right.
21 months.
Yeah.
So he's meeting those milestones, yeah. So he's doing
Brilliant.
really well. Yeah.
Excellent. Lovely. I like a happy ending, and
Yeah,
hopefully he'll just go, from strength to strength, as you clearly are doing as well. So that's wonderful. So you have two song choices. So uh, I've not heard of either of them actually. I don't think I have. 1,000 Years by Christina Perri. So why did you choose that song?
Well, as well as working for HMRC, I've actually set up my own business. So I have set up a business called Presents for Preemies because the gifts that we got, I had to put them all away, and I never knew at the start whether I was going to be able to take them out and use them. So I put gift hampers together that are appropriate for premature babies that people can buy from me. And I also have a Facebook page and Instagram where I help families sort of know what they can do to help and things. And when I was sorting out some boxes and putting them together, the 1,000 Years came on, and just listening to the words, I was quite moved by them, and they seemed to really hit home as to what I was doing and how I was feeling at that time. So
Okay, brilliant. Look forward to hearing that one. The other song is "I'm Coming Home" by Skylar Grey. Never heard of the person or the song. So I'm learning so much by doing these interviews. Music that I've been introduced to a whole new musical taste. So
yeah.
what's that song about?
So this one, it was originally written for a military family. So it's like mum or dad are in the military and it's them coming home. But then Pampers started doing the micro preemie nappies, and they did a version of that song for their advert.
Uh-huh.
You may have heard it on the advert, yeah.
I don't have a telly. I don't watch telly, so
Oh,
I've no idea. So that's why I wouldn't have heard of it.
oh, yeah. So it's on the advert, and it made me cry every time that advert came on because
Oh,
it was our journey. So yeah, it has an emotional connection as well for that one. And within the premature baby community, it's a bit of a controversial song really, because not all babies get to come home. So not everybody agrees with the song choice, but for me, my baby did get to come home, and I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, so even though it's an upsetting song, it's also a happy song. So it's he did get to come home.
yeah, lovely. So I look forward to hearing that song. And tell the listeners how they can get hold of your Presents for Preemies. Then, what's your Facebook group? And do you have a website, email address, anything like that you can give us, please?
Yeah, so you can email me at lisa@presentsforpreemies.co.uk. My website is presentsforpreemies.co.uk, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram on both. Presents, you just type in Presents for Preemies and you'll find me.
And how are you spelling Preemies?
Preemies.
So that's the word on the street, as it were, for premature babies.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Before you do go, Lisa, we've forgotten to mention a very important aspect of your story, that you're actually a co-author in a new book coming out, aren't you? And you're sharing your story in this book.
I am, yes. I'm really excited. So I'm going to be part of the Mumpreneur on Fire 3 book, which is due out next month. So I think the pre-sales are next month in September.
Excellent. So how do people get hold of a copy of that book, and presumably more detail about your story that you've written?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon, and they can get more details by going to Amazon and ordering a copy, and they will find out more about my story there, or they can come find me on Facebook or Instagram, or there's a little bit on my website as well, but there's a more detailed story in the book.
Okay, and they just go to Amazon and look up Mumpreneurs on Fire 3.
They do, yep. Yep, and they'll
Brilliant.
find me there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Lisa, and we'll just pop your record choice on now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.